Welcome to My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson, a journey into the deepest teachings of Torah and their application to our personal, emotional, and psychological lives.
A good tevach, a good week. We continue our journey in the life-changing Sefer Tanya. This program is made possible by Rena Lights LLC and is in honor and memory of Rabbi Yosef Halevi Weinberg Olav Hashalom, Rabbi Moshe Pinchas HaKohen Katz Olav Hashalom, Rabbi Yael HaKohen Kan Olav Hashalom, and is in schus and merit of Rabbi Zev Yecheskel HaKohen and Risha Katz Le'erich Yom V'Shanim Tevis for many long, healthy years. It's also in schus of our holy soldiers who are protecting the men, women, and children of Eretz Yisrael. May Hashem protect them, may Hashem defend and protect Eden everywhere, and we should have a complete victory quickly, freedom of the hostages, all b'darkei ne'em and b'darkei shalom, b'teva nira v'anigla. We are in the middle of chapter 18, Chai, chapter Yud Ches in Tanya, speaking about the very nature of a Jew. After he's explained at length the avodah, which is of course the entire purpose of existence, is that we work on connecting to God by contemplating, by using our minds, by using our emotions, by using our garments, thought, speech, and action to connect to God and to awaken and to give birth to emotions. He now moves to the in Perek Yud Ches, to what about the very natural, inherent love that every Yid has, which comes to explain further, Korev Elecha Dover Ma'ed, that it's Korev Elecha, it's accessible, reachable, relevant to everyone. Even someone, as he points out, as he emphasized in the beginning of the chapter, someone who is not able to even contemplate it at all, not even betalumis libe, not even a contemplation that it's worthy of loving God. As he said, so misha daitik tzari b'yidis Hashem v'lein lo lev lahavim b'gdulus ein sof baruch. Because remember, Korev Elecha Dover Meid, Elecha means everybody. So, in the process, this also comes to explain the word ma'oid, like he said, b'teisvus bir, the word ma'oid, Korev Elecha Dover Meid. Why? Because every Yid has an Ava Misoteres that's in his DNA, his very wiring, which is Yerusha, Lonam Avisenu, comes from the Avis, that their Aveda of complete subjugation, complete sublimation, Avis Hena and Markova, they merited to pass on to the very genes of their children, meaning each Jew, this Ava Misoteres, which is not through Aveda, simply like we're born with it. As the Alter Rebbe continues and then dissects this into details to understand exactly what this Ava is. So, the root of this Ava, in Yona, its very personality, how it's a Yerusha, and how it also includes Tchilu, which is reverence, Yiras Hashem. So we've learned so far is we've learned the how it's a Yerusha through the Ovis, like we said, and also in Yona, which is the very experience of it, which is the fact that since every person has Chochmah Shebenefesh, and Chochmah is the bridge between an experience which is beyond structure, beyond the rational, the transcendent, and it channels it into our structure. Like he said, on one hand, Chochmah, like you said, let's read inside the word that we learned, is Koyach Ma. Because it's the experience of a higher resonating truth, which is the mokar of Seichel Havana. but it's still l'mayla ma'abina. It's higher than intelligence, but it's the mokir. On the other hand, the chokhmah is l'mayla ma'avona v'asaga, and it's a mokir, and that's the meaning koyach ma. And that's why Eid Ein Sof dwells there in chokhmah. And then on the other hand, that chokhmah is, however, the beginning of the process of intelligence and all the faculties. And as such, like he said earlier, carries, therefore, the Ein Sof melubish b'chinas chokhmah shabanefesh yemishi. That chokhmah is mispashetes b'chol b'chinas hanefesh kula. It extends to all the b'chinas of the nefesh. And as we discussed at length, our chokhmah stands at the interface between kesed and all the other faculties. So here we're talking about chokhmah. The ultimate chokhmah is not just the beginning of wisdom, it's the beginning of a resonating truth of experience, something greater than yourself. That sense that a person senses something greater than themselves is there in the nefesh of every yid, yiyeh mishayiyeh mi Yisrael. Because chokhmah is not just intelligence, it's that sense of that resonating higher truth. The less machshava tfisa beklal. So less machshava tfisa beklal, because God is of course beyond machshava, beyond a thought that can grasp him. So chokhmah is that keli. If we didn't have chokhmah, it would either be the divine that's completely beyond us, or it would be our structure and our intelligence and our rational experience. Chokhmah is the interface between the two. And this will help us understand why everyone, even a kal shebekalim, like he said earlier, every id, even the lowest level of the soul, even in the nefesh of Asiyah, still retains that element of Amunah. Which, of course, in our context, is the union of Ava Mesoteres, the Korav Elecha Dover Meid, that every person has that hidden Ava. Because even in the lowest levels of Malchus of Asiyah, in there you have Chochmah of Asiyah, in which is Mislabish Malchus of Atzilus, which is Mislabish manifest Chochmah of Atzilus, which in turn is the place where Eid Ein Sof resides. Okay. So now, after we've learned, now as he began to explain, understanding why, because what the nature of Chochmah itself. So now he's going to discuss how this comes back now to understand the Ava Mesoteres that every Yid has. Right. So two of the four things are being explained in this Perek. Shedish Avazu, the root of it, as we said, that comes from the Ovis, and also Echi Yerushalanu. How it's a Yerusha to us. So now, after explaining Chochmah, he says like this: Ulechein Kol Yisrael afilu hanoshim va'amei haaretz. And now that we've established that this Chochmah is there in each person, so in other words, we're not just rational beings, we also implanted in our very beings is also a sense of a higher truth and a higher reality. That's why all Jews, he says even women, and uneducated people. Now you could ask the question immediately, how could he throw women into this category? Like almost like dismissing them as uneducated? Because he's talking, of course, in those times where women did not get an education like men did. So it's not dismissing their capacity, their minds, their ability to comprehend. In reality, even women who may not have had an education, and yet they have an inherent connection to the divine, to the transcendent. So it's actually the opposite. He's not coming to dismiss it. And Ameoritz. And uneducated people. Why? Hey, maminim b'Hashem. They believe in God. Where is it coming from? It's one thing you say a person who understands godliness. So that leads them to understand and appreciate, to have amunah, that the mind can only go that far, and we need faith to go deeper. But how does someone who doesn't have any asagah come to having amunah? And remember here, amunah is a positive thing. Not an absence of reason, an actual experience of the divine beyond reason. The answer is sha'imunah hi lamayla min hadas. V'asagah. Because amunah, faith, which is rooted in chachmah. And remember, chachmah is that bridge to that which is beyond, to the transcendent, is beyond knowledge and cognition. So if chachmah was just the beginning of intelligence, so then it wouldn't have that element of beyond. Remember, Ava Misateris is a love. Love is not just a rational thing. It means an inherent love to something that is beyond us. In this case, God. And the Alter Rebbe continues to explain where do we see that Amunah is higher than Tam V'das? So he says, Ki pesi yamin l'chol dover. He brings a posuk in Mishlei, in Proverbs, Yudal Tezvav 14:15. Pesi yamin l'chol dover. V'orim yovin. The simpleton believes everything, and the sensible one uses his understanding. And the Alter Rebbe brings both parts of the verse. What is he trying to say here? That the idea of belief is not connected to intelligence. So even though in the pasuk you could say it's a negative thing, it's like an inferior thing, that he's a fool. He's a simpleton, like he says. Nevertheless, what you come away from the pasuk is the yamin. He wants to bring the emphasis on the word yamin. He's not talking about whether it's a simpleton or not. It's the element of amunah. That amunah is not connected to seichel. So too, when it comes to the amunah that is there in every Yid, it's not shaykhs to the Havana V'Asagah B'Elokus. That's why it's connected to Chacham that's beyond comprehension. So the sensible one is connected to understanding. But the Pesi is Yamin. Amun is connected to that which is beyond intelligence. And then he continues, Alter Rebbe. Well, the Gaba Kadosh Baruch Hu. And in comparison to the Eibishter, who transcends and is beyond understanding and knowledge, like he said earlier, and no thought can grasp him at all. Hakol kipsoyim etzlei yizbarach. We are all like simpletons. Everyone is like a simpleton compared to him. So that's how he explains the Pesi, that everyone's a simpleton, because we're talking here not with your actual simpleton, but compared to the Eibishter that's beyond, everyone's like a simpleton. And yet, there's that element of Yamin. Yamin l'chol dover. So, if you're talking about something that can be grasped by intelligence, like he said, v'orim yovin, that the insensible one understands, and there, instead of using your mind, you're going to just say, I believe, when it's a rational thing, that taka is a fool. But when you're talking about compared to the Eibishter, see, even the best, greatest intelligence, everyone's like psoim, everyone's like a fool. So what's the connection? So how do we connect to it? By that sense, that intuition, by that connection through amunah of the chachmah that leads us to a place that's beyond intelligence. So in other words, faith is another tool Intelligence, rational mind is one tool that helps you understand things. Faith is a tool to experience higher realities that are beyond our minds. And in that sense, it's a very powerful tool. And now the Alter Rebbe continues to establish the case. He says, Kidiksiv, like the Pasuk says in Tehillim 73, 22 and 23, Kapitel Tehillim, Vani the pasuk Vani ba'er v'loy eda behemes hayisi imach Vani tamid imach v'gemer. So the pasuk says in Tehillim, loosely translated, I was a fool, ani be'er, without knowledge, v'loy eda, without knowledge. Behemes hayisi, I was an animal towards you, behemes hayisi imach, meaning in comparison to you, I was an animal. Vani tamid imach. Yet I always was with you. So we see here both elements here. Because you could say, since we are unable to grasp God, and we're rational human beings, if you don't have the mind to understand the Eibishter, that's it. No, but there's another tool, the tool of Amunah, to be with Him, even though you're a fool without knowledge like an animal. Like he says, Koloimer, says the Alter Rebbe, it is precisely because I was a fool and an animal, which means I'm using my faculty of faith, not reason. That's why I was always with you and connected to you. That's what caused me to be connected with you. Because I accessed another tool, a tool that's a transcendent tool that connects us to a higher and deeper reality. So the simple interpretation of the pasuk is, even though I'm a fool, nevertheless I'm with you, and I don't in any way compromise or move away from my reverence of you. But here goes a deeper explanation that Amun is a deeper faculty that's higher than Seichel. And becomes a reason. Because of that, that's why I'm with you. So in other words, it's another way of experiencing the divine. So you could say earlier, before chapter 18 in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe was talking about how to use the rational mind and contemplation. That the mind, as he explains in chapter 3, should contemplate on godliness, and that should in turn give birth. Chochmah, and being with Das should give birth to the child, to the emotions of love and reverence. Here we're talking the inherent Ava Misoteris. That's not coming through contemplation. An additional resource and tool that we have, and which allows us to connect to God beyond the mind. And this allows even those that don't have contemplation or aren't able to have contemplation to connect, because they have that Amunah Pshuta, they have that simple faith, that Ava Misoteris. So we're taking a pasuk that actually now becomes actually a Malyusa to explain how the real way to connect to God to the highest levels that are beyond the mind is through Amunah. And you can also see the word Ani Tomid, that I'm consistently connected. Because through a contemplation, it depends when you're contemplating and how much you're contemplating. The word Tomid, you can't say it's consistent. There are changes, there are shifts. But here, because it's something that is inherent, that resonating sense of truth of a higher reality, that's why it's Tomid. Okay. How the Alter Rebbe continues. So now that we've established that, we said, Kol Yisrael afilu anoshim v'ami amoritz hem aminim b'Hashem. So now he goes back to what he said earlier about the Kal Shebekalim. Remember, he spoke about the Kal Shebekalim, what was the language he used before Just I'm going back to actual Lashon Al Kapom. Afil lekal shebekalim u'peish son nimshel bezivu nefesh melchel malchus da'asiyah. So now he's going back to that, and he says like this: Ulechein, and therefore, going back to the essential theme of Ava Musateres that's inherent in all of us, Ulechein, and therefore, or that is why, Afilu kalsha bekalim u'peish Yisrael. Even kalsha bekalim, as I explained, means they're very light. Literally, kal means the light of the light with Judaism. You could say the irreverent. It's not an intense experience. So kalsha is a word used in Torah to refer to someone who's not really committed with a full intensity. So you could say irreverent, you can say not so connected. Upeish Yisrael. So you see from that, kalsha bekalim upeish Yisrael, and sinful Jews, moisim nafshem al kedusha shashem al arev. Will in a majority of cases sanctify God's name and give up their lives when push comes to shove. V'sevli minuyim koshim shalei lichber b'Hashem echad. And they will tolerate, they will suffer harsh torture, inuyim koshim, harsh afflictions, rather than denounce the one God, rather than deny or denounce the one God. Which seemingly, you could wonder, it's one thing a person who's a devout person, connected, has values and standards, so even if you threaten them with death, they will stand up and they'll die for their values. But you're talking now kalsha bekalim upeish Yisrael, who've not shown any particular passionate connection. Where does this come from? It seems counterintuitive. That they would be ready to die and be moser nefesh and sanctify God's name. When we see in their day-to-day behavior, they don't have a problem, or they're capable of compromising the relationship they have with God. So the Alter Rebbe is using what we're learning here as a proof. The fact that they have it means that they have something that connects them. That's not necessarily rational, because it's not coming from a rational place. It's not coming from a contemplation. Where is it coming from? This ava that is mesuteres in the chochma shebenefesh that they have. The koyach ma, that ma, from a higher reality that's within them, which usually remains dormant, but if they're challenged and threatened, you'll see that they're al arev, the majority will sacrifice themselves, will be ready to be moser nefesh and give their lives. Va'afim hem burim va'amei ha'aretz ve'en yoidim gedulas Hashem. Even if they are burim could be someone who's crass, someone who's morally unrefined, undeveloped. Va'amei ha'aretz, which you used before, amei ha'aretz, uneducated. So in other words, they've not evolved, they've not developed themselves. So you think again, how does it come to them? This level of commitment. Ve'en yedim gedulas Hashem. So they're in that state that they don't know, they're not aware. They're ignorant of God's greatness. So clearly it's not coming from an intellectual place. V'gam b'ma'at sheyedim. And even to the little knowledge that, or you could interpret this two ways. Even to those few that do have some knowledge of God. Aim is beinim klal. They don't give it much attention. They give it little thought. Aim is beinim klal. Even if they have that knowledge. That's one way to interpret it. Another way, that says Gam b'ma'at, is not talking about the Burim and Amei Ha'aretz. Well, actually, let me correct myself. The interpretation I just said is that even those that have some, they don't pay too much attention to. They don't give it much thought. Another way of explaining it, that is talking about the Burim and Amei Oretz. That who have some little yediyah. So even in that yediyah, they don't have any hisbonenus. They don't give it much thought. So the question is whether who is it referring to, the ma'at? Is it referring to the Burim Amei Oretz that have some awareness, but they don't give it much thought? Or it's talking about not Burim Amei Oretz, but those that do have some knowledge, but they are not paying attention or not giving it thought. So if that's the case, they're not mizbein and klal. So where's it coming from, this Mesiris Nefesh? So it says ve'ein. So from this we understand ve'ein meisim nafsha machmas das v'izbonus b'Hashem klal. So therefore they're sacrificed and they're ready to give their lives for godliness. Is not coming from hisbonus. First of all, from das. It's not coming from any intelligent appreciation and knowledge, and it's not coming from any any thinking. Like you said, both things. Either ein yedim gedulas Hashem, they're not aware of it, or even if they're a little aware, they're not contemplating in it. They're not paying attention. They're not giving it much thought. So you can't say the Mesiris Nefesh is coming from there. Machmas das v'izbonus b'Hashem klal. It's not coming from that. Elo. So then you have to say it's coming from something that's beyond das. Elo bli shum das v'izbonus. Rather, they sacrifice themselves without any intelligent appreciation or contemplation on it. It's just for them, it's an impossibility, a super rational impossibility to denounce the one God, without any reasoning or rational argument whatsoever. And that is because they have Hainu, Mishum Shashem Echad Meir Mechaya Kol HaNefesh Al Yidei Slapshusei B'Bchinas Chochmah Shabah. Precisely for that reason, because Hashem Echad, which is higher, like we said, Eid Ein Sof, radiates, illuminates, and enters and vitalizes the entire soul, all of their soul, by the one God, by manifesting in the soul's component of Chochmah, which transcends any fathomable knowledge and cognitive intellect. That's the explanation. So now that we understand that Chochmah is not just wisdom, because then it wouldn't be that conduit, that channel. Chochmah is a keli, so-called a vehicle, for the Eid Ein Sof that's higher than Seichel. So that is in every nefesh, that we have Yerusham Aviseinu. Therefore there's that Ava Mesuteres, that when push comes to shove, and they're threatened, alareiv, they will sacrifice their lives, not b'tzad seichel, because the chokhmah, the super rational awareness of something greater than, which makes it impossible from them to deny God in that situation. Now, this, of course, needs more explanation, but we'll stop here, the end of chapter 18, but we'll discuss it more at length in the next year. This has been Tanya Applied. You could check out TanyaApplied.com for this and previous programs. Everyone have a good Tavoch. A kosher and freilich in Pesach.
This has been My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Please join us again next week. Visit ChasidusApplied.com for archived classes and more resources.